The courtroom doors swung open and every head turned. I had not walked into a place like this in 17 years. The marble floors echoed with my footsteps, each one deliberate, measured, carrying the weight of decisions I thought I would never have to make again. But when they came for my son, when they tried to take away his children, they awakened something in me that had been sleeping for far too long. Judge Marcus Freeman looked up from his papers. His eyes met mine and I watched the color drain from his face. His mouth opened slightly, then closed. His hand holding the pen began to tremble. I saw recognition flood his features like a wave crashing against rocks. He knew exactly who I was. The question that escaped his lips was barely audible, but everyone heard it. "Who are you?" The attorney representing my former daughter-in-law stopped mid-sentence. The stenographer paused, her fingers hovering over the keys. My son Thomas turned in his chair, and when our eyes met I saw hope flicker in them for the first time in months. His face was gaunt, shadows under his eyes from sleepless nights and endless worry. He had lost 20 pounds. His hands shook constantly now. This custody battle had destroyed him piece by piece, and I had watched from my quiet home, unable to bear it any longer. I did not answer the judge immediately. I simply walked forward through the center aisle of that courtroom. My gray coat was draped over my arm. Beneath it I wore a navy blue dress, simple but elegant. My silver hair was pulled back in a neat bun. I wore no jewelry except for my wedding ring, the one my late husband had placed on my finger 45 years ago. I did not need jewelry or expensive clothes to command attention. Presence is not bought. It is earned through decades of never backing down, never compromising on what is right, never letting power corrupt what justice demands. I placed my hand on Thomas' shoulder and felt him exhale as if he had been holding his breath for months. His shoulder trembled under my touch. I squeezed gently, a silent message. "I'm here now. Everything changes now." The woman sitting across the aisle, my former daughter-in-law Jessica, looked at me with confusion that quickly morphed into something else. Her mother Patricia sat beside her, dressed in designer clothes that probably cost more than most people earned in a month. Patricia had that look wealthy people get when they believe their money makes them untouchable. Her diamond necklace caught the light. Her perfectly manicured nails drummed against her leather handbag. She leaned toward her daughter and whispered something urgent. Jessica's face went pale. Their attorney, a man named Richard Cross, was known in legal circles as a shark. He had built his reputation destroying people in family court. He specialized in custody cases where wealthy clients wanted to crush their former spouses. He had never lost a case in this county. He was expensive, ruthless, and utterly without conscience. Right now he was staring at me, trying to figure out why the judge had reacted the way he did. Judge Freeman cleared his throat. His hand was still shaking slightly as he set down his pen. The silence in the courtroom stretched on. Finally he spoke again, his voice unsteady. "Ma'am, I need you to identify yourself for the record." Smiled. It was a small smile, barely there, but loaded with meaning. Everyone in this room was about to understand that the game had changed. The rules they thought they knew no longer applied. Because when Margaret Catherine Holloway enters a courtroom, everything shifts. My name is Margaret Catherine Holloway. I am the mother of the defendant, Thomas Holloway. There was a pause. The judge swallowed hard. I could see him trying to maintain his composure, trying to be professional but failing. 'Cause he knew. He had studied my cases in law school. He had read my opinions. He had built his entire judicial philosophy on the foundations I had laid. Dr. Margaret Holloway, former Chief Justice of the State Supreme Court. I nodded once. The very same. The reaction was immediate and profound. Richard Cross actually dropped the file he was holding. Papers scattered across the table. Jessica grabbed her mother's arm. Patricia's eyes went wide. The court reporter sat up straighter. The bailiff in the corner looked between me and the judge with sudden understanding. Even the clerk who had been organizing documents froze. Thomas looked up at me with tears streaming down his face. He had known I was a lawyer once. He knew I had worked in the court system. But I had never told him the extent of it. I had never explained that for 30 years I had been one of the most powerful judicial figures in the state. That my rulings had shaped constitutional law. That my name appeared in textbooks. That lawyers and judges across the country still cited my opinions. I had hidden that part of myself away when I retired because I wanted to be just his mother, just a grandmother to his 2 precious children. I wanted peace. But they had taken that peace from me when they took my grandchildren away from my son. Judge Freeman composed himself with visible effort. His hands flattened on the bench in front of him. Chief Justice Holloway, it is an extraordinary honor to have you in my courtroom. Your work on parental rights in the Henderson case is still the standard we follow. Your analysis of due process in family court has guided my decisions for my entire career. I inclined my head graciously. I appreciate that, Judge Freeman. I remember reading your law review article on custody determinations. You were quite brilliant in your interpretation. I had high hopes you would go into family law. I am pleased to see you did. His face colored slightly with pride and embarrassment. Behind me I heard Richard Cross whisper urgently to Jessica. The attorney was finally realizing what he was up against. Jessica was shaking her head, whispering back frantically. Patricia had pulled out her phone and was typing rapidly, no doubt searching my name, trying to understand who had just walked into their carefully orchestrated scheme. Judge Freeman regained his professional demeanor. Chief Justice Holloway, are you here to represent your son? No, Your Honor. I have been retired from active practice for 17 years. I am here simply as a mother, as an observer, and as someone who understands intimately how justice is supposed to function in these courts. The last part hung in the air like a challenge. Judge Freeman understood it. His jaw tightened slightly. He knew I was watching him now. Every decision he made would be under the scrutiny of someone who had written the book on judicial conduct. Literally, I had authored the judicial ethics manual this state used for training. Mr. Cross, the judge said, turning to the attorney. You may continue with your presentation. Richard Cross stood up, but he had lost his swagger. His confidence had evaporated the moment I walked in. He shuffled papers unnecessarily, buying time, trying to recalibrate his strategy. Your Honor, as I was saying before the interruption, my client Jessica Holloway has been the primary caregiver for the children aged 9 and 11 for their entire lives. The father, Thomas Holloway, has demonstrated a pattern of instability, financial irresponsibility, and emotional volatility that makes him unsuitable for custody. I sat down next to Thomas and pulled out a leather notebook from my bag. I began taking notes in neat, precise handwriting. Every word, every claim, every lie. I had done this thousands of times before. My mind was already cataloging the inconsistencies, the exaggerations, the manipulation of facts. Thomas leaned close and whispered, Mom, I did not know. Why did you never tell me? I patted his hand. Later, son. Right now just sit quietly and let me work. Cross continued. My client has provided a stable home environment. She has the financial means to provide for the children. She has family support from her mother Patricia Morrison, who is a respected businesswoman in this community. Meanwhile, Mr. Holloway has been fired from 2 jobs in the past year, has documented anger issues, and has been unable to maintain consistent housing. Every word was a carefully constructed lie or distortion of the truth. Thomas had not been fired from 2 jobs. He had left one job because the company relocated and found another immediately. He had moved apartments once because the building was sold. His so-called anger issues consisted of one incident where he raised his voice during a mediation session after Jessica laughed about keeping the children from him during Christmas. But Cross was good at his job. He made it sound damning. He painted a picture of an unstable father who could not be trusted with his own children. And he did it with the confidence of someone who had never been challenged, who had always won, who believed money and rhetoric could overcome truth. I continued writing. Judge Freeman was watching me more than he was watching Cross. He knew what I was doing. He knew I was building something. Cross finally concluded his opening statement. He sat down with a satisfied smile. Jessica looked relieved. Patricia nodded approvingly. Judge Freeman turned to Thomas. "Mr. Holloway, you are representing yourself." Thomas started to stand, but I put my hand on his arm. "Your Honor, if I may. While I am not acting as counsel of record, I would like to ask the court permission to address some factual inaccuracies that were just presented." Cross shot to his feet. "Objection, Your Honor. Chief Justice Holloway is not registered as counsel in this case. She cannot simply interject herself into these proceedings." Judge Freeman looked between us. He knew the rules. He also knew who I was. He also knew that if there were factual inaccuracies, it was his duty to hear about them. "Chief Justice Holloway, while I deeply respect your presence here, Mr. Cross is correct. You are not counsel of record. However, I will allow you to make a statement as a family member if it pertains to relevant facts." "Understood. Thank you, Your Honor. I will be brief." I walked around the table and stood in the center of the courtroom. I did not need notes for what I was about to say. I had spent the last 3 weeks investigating every claim Jessica and her attorney had made. I had contacted people. I had gathered documents. I had built a case file that would have made my former clerks proud. Mr. Cross stated that my son was fired from 2 jobs. That is false. I have here a letter from his employer at Morrison Technical Solutions confirming he left voluntarily when the company relocated to another state. I also have a letter from his current employer, Davenport Engineering, where he has worked for the past 8 months and was recently promoted to senior project manager. I held up the documents. Judge Freeman gestured for the bailiff to take them. Cross' face tightened. Mr. Cross mentioned inconsistent housing. My son moved apartments once in the past 18 months because his building was converted to condominiums and sold. He now lives in a 3-bedroom house with a yard where his children have their own rooms. I have the lease and photographs. More documents were handed to the bailiff. Jessica was whispering urgently to Cross. Patricia had stopped typing on her phone and was staring at me with undisguised hostility. As for anger issues, I continued, my voice steady and clear. The only documented incident occurred during a mediation session where my son raised his voice after Ms. Holloway made a joke about denying him access to his children during a major holiday. The mediator report, which Mr. Cross conveniently did not mention, indicates that Ms. Holloway's behavior was described as deliberately provocative, and that my son's reaction was understandable given the circumstances. I paused, letting that sink in. Judge Freeman was reading the documents as they were handed to him. His expression was growing darker. "I have one more thing to add, Your Honor." Mr. Cross emphasized his client's financial stability and family support. What he did not mention is that Ms. Holloway has no actual employment. She is listed as a consultant for her mother company, Morrison Enterprises, receiving $200,000 annually despite no documentation of any work performed. Additionally, there are currently 3 lawsuits pending against Morrison Enterprises for fraudulent business practices. I have copies of the court filings. The courtroom erupted. Jessica stood up shouting, "That is not relevant. You have no right to bring up my mother business." Patricia was on her feet too. "This is a witch hunt. You are abusing your position to intimidate us." Judge Freeman banged his gavel. "Order. Everyone sit down." They sat. But the damage was done. The perfect picture they had painted was cracking. I walked calmly back to my seat next to Thomas. He was staring at me like he had never seen me before. Cross tried to recover. "Your Honor, these documents are being presented without proper discovery procedures. We have had no opportunity to review or challenge them." "I anticipated that, Your Honor," I said without standing. "Every document I provided was obtained through legal public records requests or voluntary statements. Nothing here violates discovery rules. However, if Mr. Cross would like time to review them, I am certain the court would grant a continuance." The last thing Cross wanted was a continuance. He had come here expecting to steamroll an unrepresented father. He had expected to win today. A delay would give Thomas time to potentially find real legal representation. It would give me time to dig deeper. No continuance necessary, Cross said quickly. We will proceed. Judge Freeman was still reading through the documents. His frown deepened with each page. Finally he looked up. Mr. Cross, I am troubled by the discrepancies between your statements and these documents. I am going to order an independent custody evaluation. I want a court-appointed psychologist to interview both parents and both children. I want home visits. I want school records. I want medical records. I want a complete picture before I make any custody determination. Cross' face went red. Your Honor, we have already provided psychological evaluations from 2 licensed professionals who interviewed the children and determined they were thriving in their mother care. Who paid for those evaluations, Mr. Cross? My client did, naturally. And how much did each evaluation cost? Cross hesitated. Standard professional fees. How much, Mr. Cross? $40,000 each. The courtroom fell silent. Judge Freeman's eyes narrowed. $40,000 for a custody evaluation is hardly standard, Mr. Cross. That is approximately 10 times the normal rate. It raises questions about the objectivity of those evaluations. Those doctors are highly qualified specialists. Cross protested. I'm sure they are. Which is why I want an independent evaluation from someone neither party has paid. Someone appointed by this court. Someone whose only interest is the welfare of the children. Jessica was crying now. But they were not sad tears. They were tears of rage and frustration. She had been so certain of victory. Her mother had promised her the best lawyer. They had spent over $300,000 on this custody battle, buying expert witnesses, paying for evaluations, hiring private investigators to dig up dirt on Thomas. And now it was falling apart. Judge Freeman continued. I am also concerned about the living situation. Ms. Holloway, where do the children currently reside? With me, Your Honor, Jessica said, her voice thick with tears. In my mother home. And how long have they lived there? Since the separation. About 14 months. Issy. And Mr. Holloway, you have visitation. Understood. I am supposed to have the children every other weekend, Your Honor. But in the past 6 months, I have only seen them 4 times. Ms. Holloway has cancelled 17 scheduled visitations. She claims the children are sick, or they have other plans, or they do not want to see me. Is this true, Ms. Holloway? Jessica looked at her attorney. Cross stood. Your Honor, my client has made every effort to facilitate visitation. If the children have expressed reluctance to visit their father, that is not something she can control. I stood again. Your Honor, I have here a series of text messages between Ms. Holloway and my son. In them, she explicitly states that she will make sure the children forget about him. She tells him he is a failure as a father. She threatens to move out of state so he will never see the children again. She also sent several messages to the children telling them their father did not want to see them when in fact my son was begging for visitation. Cross' face went white. Those are private communications. They cannot be admitted without proper authentication. Judge Freeman looked at him coldly. Mr. Cross, if those messages exist and contain what Chief Justice Holloway describes, they are absolutely relevant to this custody determination. I want copies of all communications between the parties regarding visitation. I already have them prepared, Your Honor. I handed a thick folder to the bailiff. Inside were screenshots of months of messages. Every cruel text. Every cancelled visitation with false excuses. Every attempt Jessica had made to erase Thomas from his children's lives. Judge Freeman spent 10 minutes reading through them. The courtroom was silent except for Jessica quiet sobbing. Patricia had her arm around her daughter but her face was stone. She knew they were losing. Finally the judge looked up. Ms. Holloway, these messages are deeply disturbing. They show a pattern of parental alienation. They show deliberate interference with court-ordered visitation. They show contempt for your children need to have a relationship with their father. I was protecting them, Jessica said desperately. He is not stable. He does not deserve them. That is not your decision to make, Ms. Holloway. The court determines custody based on the best interests of the children, not on your personal feelings about your ex-husband. And based on what I have seen here today, I have serious questions about your judgment. He turned to Thomas. Mr. Holloway, I am immediately modifying the custody arrangement. Effective today, you will have the children 50% of the time. 1 week with their mother, 1 week with you, alternating. All holidays will be split equally. And Ms. Holloway, if you interfere with visitation again, I will hold you in contempt and consider transferring primary custody to Mr. Holloway. Jessica screamed. Well, you cannot do this. My mother will have your job. We will appeal. We will destroy you. Judge Freeman banged his gavel hard. Ms. Holloway, you are in contempt of court for that outburst. You are fined $1,000. Say one more word and I will make it 10,000. Patricia stood up, shaking with rage. She pointed at me. This is all because of her. She is manipulating you. She is using her old connections to pervert justice. I remained seated, calm, unbothered. I did not need to respond. Judge Freeman did it for me. Mrs. Morrison, Chief Justice Holloway has done nothing but present documented facts. Facts that you and your daughter apparently hoped would never come to light. Now sit down or join your daughter in contempt. Patricia sat, but her eyes burned with hatred as she looked at me. Judge Freeman concluded the hearing. There will be a follow-up session in 3 months to review the custody arrangement. I expect a full report from the independent evaluator. I expect both parents to attend co-parenting classes. And I expect both parties to conduct themselves with maturity and respect for the sake of these children. Court is adjourned. The gavel came down with finality. Thomas turned to me and broke down completely. He buried his face in my shoulder and sobbed like a child. All the months of pain and frustration and helplessness poured out of him. I held him and stroked his hair just like I did when he was little. It is over, son. You have your children back. Across the aisle, Richard Cross was packing his briefcase with sharp, angry movements. Jessica was still crying, inconsolable. Patricia was on her phone already making calls, probably to other lawyers, probably threatening to sue everyone in sight. They left without looking at us. But I had nothing to say to them anyway. The bailiff approached us. Chief Justice Holloway, the judge would like to speak with you in his chambers if you have a moment. He nodded. Thomas, wait here. I will be right back. I followed the bailiff through a side door and down a hallway to the judge's private office. Judge Freeman was removing his robe. He hung it carefully on a hook and gestured for me to sit. Chief Justice, I have to ask. Why now? You have been retired for almost 2 decades. Why come back for this case? I sat down and met his eyes. 'Cause he is my son. And those are my grandchildren. And I watched for months as they were being used as weapons. I watched my son deteriorate. I watched him lose weight, lose sleep, lose hope. And I decided that I did not spend 30 years fighting for justice just to stand by and watch injustice destroy my own family. Judge Freeman nodded slowly. Understand. I just want you to know I would have made the right decision even if you had not been here. Those messages, that pattern of behavior, it was all going to come out eventually. I know you would have. You are a good judge, Marcus. I smiled slightly. But having me here certainly accelerated the process, did it not? He laughed quietly. Yes, it did. Cross is going to file complaints. He is going to claim judicial bias. He is going to make noise. Let him. My record speaks for itself. Your record speaks for itself. Anyone who reviews this case will see that you followed the law and protected the best interests of the children. That is all that matters. He walked me to the door. Thank you for everything you taught me, Chief Justice. My career has been built on the foundation you laid. I patted his arm. Keep doing good work, Marcus. These families need judges who actually care about justice, not just closing cases. I left his office and found Thomas waiting in the hallway. He looked exhausted but lighter somehow, as if a massive weight had been lifted from his shoulders. Can I take you home, Mom? Actually, I have somewhere I need to go first. We drove in silence for a while. Thomas kept glancing at me, opening his mouth to speak, then closing it again. Finally he managed to find words. Why did you never tell me? About who you were. About what you did. I looked out the window at the passing landscape. Because that person terrified me, Thomas. That version of myself who fought every single day, who made powerful enemies, who lived under constant threat. Your father died of a heart attack at 62. The doctors said stress was a major factor. He worried about me constantly. The dangerous cases. The death threats. The security details. When he died, I promised myself I would walk away from all of it. I would just be a quiet woman who tended her garden and baked cookies for her grandchildren. But you came back. I turned to look at him. Because some things are more important than peace. Some battles have to be fought no matter what they cost. And you are my son. Those are my grandchildren. I would walk through fire for you. Thomas pulled the car over to the side of the road. He put it in park and just sat there crying again, but differently this time. These were tears of relief and gratitude and love. Thank you, Mom. I do not know what I would have done without you. You would have survived. You are stronger than you know. But you do not have to do it alone anymore. We drove the rest of the way to my house in comfortable silence. When we pulled into the driveway, I saw my garden waiting for me. The roses needed pruning. The vegetable patch needed weeding. My quiet life was calling me back. But that evening, as I sat on my porch with a cup of tea watching the sunset, I felt different. For 17 years I had believed that Margaret Holloway, the Chief Justice, was dead and buried. That she had been replaced by Margaret Holloway, the grandmother who wanted nothing more than peace. But I had been wrong. That woman had never died. She had just been sleeping. And when my family needed her, she woke up. The next few months were a careful dance. The independent custody evaluation took place over 6 weeks. A court-appointed psychologist named Dr. Sarah Chen met with both Thomas and Jessica multiple times. She visited both homes. She interviewed the children separately and together. She spoke with teachers, neighbors, and family friends. I did not interfere with the process. I had done what I needed to do in court. Now it was time to let the system work as it was designed to. But I stayed close. I made sure Thomas knew I was there if he needed me. The children came to visit me on Thomas' first custody weekend. They were cautious at first, unsure how to act. Their mother had spent months poisoning them against their father, and by extension against me. But children are resilient. They remember love even when adults try to make them forget. My oldest grandson, 9-year-old Daniel, stood in my garden looking at the vegetables growing in neat rows. "Grandma, why does Mom say Dad does not love us?" I knelt down beside him, ignoring the protest from my knees. "Because your mother is in a lot of pain right now, Daniel. And sometimes when people are in pain, they say things that are not true. Your father loves you more than anything in the world. He has fought so hard to be with you. Do you understand that?" Daniel nodded slowly. "I missed him. Mom said he did not want to see us. But I missed him." I hugged him close. "I know, sweetheart. But things are different now. You will get to see him all the time. And me too." The younger boy, 7-year-old Michael, was more resilient. He ran around my yard chasing butterflies, laughing, free in a way I had not seen in over a year. Thomas sat on the porch watching them, tears streaming down his face again, but this time they were good tears. I sat beside him. "They will heal," I said quietly. "Children heal faster than adults. They forgive faster too. Just love them. That is all they need." "What about Jessica?" he asked. "What happens to her?" "That depends on her. The court ordered therapy. If she goes and does the actual work, she might become a better mother. If she does not, if she continues trying to manipulate and control, she will lose them completely." "I do not want her to lose them," Thomas said. "Despite everything, I do not want that. They need their mother. They just need a healthy version of her." I patted his hand. "You have a good heart, son. Better than she deserves." Dr. Chen report came in about 10 weeks after our court appearance. I did not see it directly, but Thomas told me the key findings. The children showed significant anxiety when discussing their mother home. They used words like walking on eggshells and being scared to make her mad. They described their father home as relaxed and safe. They said he listened to them, played with them, helped with homework, made them feel loved. The report recommended maintaining the 50-50 custody arrangement, but suggested Jessica continue therapy and parenting classes. It also noted that the children's maternal grandmother, Patricia Morrison, appeared to be a negative influence who reinforced Jessica's toxic behaviors. The report recommended limiting Patricia's unsupervised time with the children. Jessica did not take the report well. She filed an appeal. She hired 3 new lawyers. She spent another $200,000. Patricia used her business connections to try to intimidate Judge Freeman. She made complaints to the Judicial Oversight Committee. She threatened to go to the media. None of it worked. Because the truth is a fortress that cannot be breached by money or influence. And the truth was that Jessica had spent over a year trying to erase her children's father from their lives, and the system was not going to allow it anymore. The appeal was denied. The custody arrangement stood. 6 months after that first hearing, a second review took place. By then the children had settled into the new routine. They were thriving. Their grades improved. Their anxiety decreased. They smiled more. They laughed more. They were healing. Jessica attended the hearing looking thin and tired. She had completed her therapy sessions. Her therapist wrote a letter saying she was making progress but still had significant work to do on her anger issues and control problems. The judge ordered another 6 months of therapy and maintained the custody arrangement. Patricia did not attend. I heard later that Morrison Enterprises was under federal investigation for fraud. She had bigger problems than a custody battle now. As for me, I returned to my quiet life. My garden flourished. I baked cookies every Sunday for when the boys visited. I read books on my porch. I watched sunsets and listened to birds sing. But something was different. Word had gotten out about what happened in that courtroom. Former colleagues started calling. I heard about other cases, other families being destroyed by wealthy vindictive spouses who used the system as a weapon. An attorney named Lisa Park called me one afternoon. "Chief Justice Holloway, I have a case I think you should know about. A father with full custody, 2 young daughters, ex-wife with substance abuse issues using her family money to try to take the kids. The father cannot afford proper representation. The ex-wife lawyer is destroying him in court." I listened to the details. It was heartbreakingly similar to Thomas' situation. Another good parent being crushed by money and manipulation. "What do you want me to do?" "Yes. Just what you did before. Show up. Let the judge know someone is watching. Someone who understands justice." I hesitated. I had promised myself Thomas' case was the last. That I would not be pulled back into this world. That I had earned my peace. But then I thought about those 2 little girls. I thought about them losing their father because he did not have enough money to fight. I thought about justice being perverted by wealth and power. "Send me the case files," I said. Lisa's voice brightened with relief and hope. "Thank you, Chief Justice. Thank you so much." Over the next year I did it 3 more times. Never as official counsel. Always just as an observer. But my presence changed everything. Judges remembered who I was. Attorneys became more careful with their facts. Lies were exposed. Justice was served. I was not Chief Justice Margaret Holloway anymore. I was not even practicing law officially. But I had found a new purpose. I became the guardian angel for parents who could not afford to fight. I became the balance that tipped scales back toward truth. Thomas' case went back to court one final time 2 years after that first hearing. The children were now 11 and 9. Dr. Chen did a follow-up evaluation. Both children stated clearly that they wanted to spend equal time with both parents. Jessica had completed 2 years of therapy. Her therapist wrote that she had made significant progress. She had learned to manage her anger. She had stopped trying to control every aspect of her children's lives. She had accepted that Thomas was a good father and the children needed him. In court that day, Jessica did something I had not expected. She turned to Thomas and apologized. "I'm sorry. For everything. For the lies. For trying to keep the kids from you. For all of it. I was angry and hurt and I wanted you to hurt too. But I was wrong. Our kids deserved better than what I put them through. Thomas looked stunned. Then he nodded slowly. Thank you for saying that. I never wanted to hurt you either. I just wanted to be a father to my children. Judge Freeman watched this exchange with visible satisfaction. This is what I hope for in every case. Two parents who can put their children's needs above their own pain. I am pleased to see you both have reached this point. He finalized the custody arrangement. 50-50. Equal time. Equal holidays. Equal decision-making. True co-parenting. After the hearing, Thomas and Jessica talked for a few minutes in the hallway. It was not friendly exactly. Too much damage had been done for that. But it was civil. It was respectful. It was what the children needed. Thomas came over to me. Mom, did you see that? She actually apologized. People can change, I said. If they want to. If they do the work. Jessica did the work. That took courage. Do you think we can really co-parent? After everything, you can try. That is all anyone can do. Why? That evening I sat in my garden with both my grandsons. Daniel was telling me about his soccer team. Michael was showing me a drawing he made at school. Thomas sat beside me, finally at peace. Finally able to be the father he always wanted to be. Grandma, Daniel said suddenly. Mom told us what you did. How you helped Dad. She said you used to be really important. Like a super powerful judge or something. Smiled. I was a judge, yes. A long time ago. Why did you stop? 'Cause I was tired. And I wanted to be just a grandma. But you came back when Dad needed you. Yes, I did. Would you do it again? If someone else needed you? I looked at Thomas. He was watching me with curiosity, wondering how I would answer. I thought about all the families I had helped in the past 2 years. The fathers and mothers who had their children saved because I showed up in court. The judges who had been reminded that justice matters more than money. The attorneys who had been forced to tell the truth because they knew I was watching. Yes, I said finally. I would. I did not spend 30 years fighting for justice just to let it die when I retired. That woman I used to be, that warrior, she is still here. She just sleeps most of the time now. But when she is needed, she wakes up. That is so cool, Michael said. You are like a superhero. I laughed. Not a superhero, sweetie. Just someone who believes some things are worth fighting for. Like family. Like truth. Like making sure children do not lose parents who love them. The boys went back to playing. Thomas leaned over and kissed my cheek. I love you, Mom. Thank you for being my hero. I love you too, son. Always. As the sun set over my garden, I felt complete. I had found the balance I had been searching for all these years. I did not need to be Chief Justice Margaret Holloway every day. I did not need to fight every battle. But when justice called, when families needed protection, when the vulnerable needed a champion, I would be there. Because some powers never truly die. They just sleep, waiting for the right moment to wake up. And I, Margaret Catherine Holloway, had learned that real strength is not in fighting every battle. It is in knowing which battles matter most. The Iron Justice had not retired. She had just become more selective about where she applied her power. And that made her even more dangerous to those who thought money could buy their way out of accountability. 3 years after that first court appearance, I received a letter. It was from Judge Freeman. Inside was an invitation to speak at the State Judicial Conference. They wanted me to address new family court judges about ethics, about resisting pressure from wealthy litigants, about putting children's interests above all else. Accepted. Standing at that podium, looking out at 100 judges, I felt the weight of my legacy. These were the people who would shape justice for the next generation. These were the guardians who would protect vulnerable families from those who would abuse the system. I told them about Thomas' case, about Jessica, about Patricia, about how money almost destroyed a good father relationship with his children. I told them about the importance of looking past expensive lawyers and polished presentations to find the truth. I told them that every decision they made would echo in the lives of children for decades to come. When I finished, they gave me a standing ovation. Dozens of judges lined up afterward to shake my hand, to thank me, to tell me how my work had inspired their careers. But the most meaningful moment came later. A young female judge, probably in her early 30s, approached me nervously. "Chief Justice Holloway, I just wanted to thank you. I had a case last month. Wealthy mother, powerful family, trying to eliminate the father completely. Your speech reminded me why I became a judge. I stood up to the pressure, followed the truth. The father got his children back." She had tears in her eyes. I hugged her tightly. "That is all that matters. Keep fighting the good fight." Driving home that evening, I felt a profound sense of peace. My legacy was not just in the rulings I had written or the cases I had won. It was in the judges I had trained, the attorneys I had inspired, the families I had saved. It was rippling outward, generation after generation, protecting the vulnerable long after I was gone. My phone rang. It was Thomas. "Mom, where are you?" "The boys made dinner." "Well, they made sandwiches, but they are very proud of them. Can you come over?" "I'm on my way, son." When I arrived at Thomas' house, both boys ran out to greet me. They were growing so fast. Daniel was almost as tall as my shoulder now. Michael had lost his last baby tooth. They grabbed my hands and pulled me inside, chattering excitedly about their day, their friends, their plans for the weekend. Jessica was there too. She had come to pick up some of the boys' school supplies they had left at Thomas' house. She smiled at me, tentative but genuine. "Chief Justice Holloway, the boys told me you spoke at the judicial conference today. They are very proud of their grandmother." "I am just a grandmother now, Jessica. You can call me Margaret." She nodded. "Thank you, Margaret, for everything. I know I was a nightmare. I know I almost destroyed everything good in my life. But you stopped me before it was too late. You saved our family even from me. You saved yourself, Jessica. You did the work. You made the changes. That took real courage." She smiled, this time with warmth. "The boys need their grandmother. I'm glad they have you." After Jessica left, we sat down to eat the sandwiches the boys had made. They were messy and overstuffed with too much peanut butter, but they tasted like love. We laughed and talked and made plans for a camping trip next month. Later, after the boys went to bed, Thomas and I sat on his back porch. The night was cool and clear, stars scattered across the sky like diamonds on velvet. "Do you ever miss it, Mom? The courtroom, the power, being Chief Justice?" I considered the question carefully. "Sometimes. I miss the feeling of making a real difference. I miss the intellectual challenge. I miss being part of something bigger than myself. But then I look at what I have now." "Have you?" "I have my grandsons. I have peace most of the time. And when justice really calls, when it truly matters, I can still answer." That balance, I think that is what I was searching for all along. "You found it." I smiled in the darkness. "I think I finally did." We sat in comfortable silence, father and son, listening to the night sounds of crickets and distant traffic. I thought about the journey that had brought us here. The pain, the battles, the victories, the healing. My life had been long and full. I had served on the highest court in the state. I had shaped laws that protected millions of people. I had fought corruption and stood against power. I had made enemies and allies, won battles and lost some too. I had loved deeply and lost my husband too soon. I had retired, seeking peace, trying to escape the weight of responsibility. But the truth was simpler than I had realized. You cannot escape who you are. You can only choose how and when to be that person. Margaret Holloway, the grandmother, and Margaret Holloway, the Chief Justice, were not separate people. They were different facets of the same woman. One who loved her family fiercely. One who believed in justice absolutely. One who would fight when fighting was necessary and rest when rest was possible. The Iron Justice had not retired. She had evolved. She had become something better. Not a warrior constantly at battle, but a guardian watching over those she loved, ready to defend them when the moment demanded it. That night, driving home under the stars, I felt complete. My garden waited for me. My books waited for me. My quiet life waited for me. But I was not afraid anymore that I had abandoned my purpose. Because my purpose had never been about being in a courtroom every day or making rulings that shaped history. My purpose was simpler and more profound. It was about protecting those who could not protect themselves. It was about standing up for truth when lies tried to prevail. It was about using whatever power I had, whether vast or small, to make the world a little more just. And I would continue doing that in my own way for as long as I drew breath. 5 years passed. Daniel was now 16, tall and confident, talking about colleges. Michael was 14, artistic and sensitive, filling notebooks with sketches and stories. They spent every other week with Thomas, every other week with Jessica, and visited me most Sundays for the cookies I still baked religiously. Jessica had remarried, a kind man named Robert who treated the boys with respect and patience. Thomas had started dating a woman named Claire who worked as a teacher and loved hiking. Both parents had found happiness, separately but peacefully, co-parenting with a kind of maturity that should have existed from the beginning. Patricia had spent 2 years in federal prison for fraud. Her business empire had collapsed. She had lost everything, not because I pursued her, but because her own corruption had finally caught up with her. Sometimes justice arrives on its own schedule. I continued my work quietly, never officially practicing law, but showing up in courtrooms when families needed someone to watch, someone to ensure that truth prevailed over money. I had helped 17 families over those 5 years. 17 sets of children who got to keep relationships with parents who loved them. 17 victories against wealth and manipulation. My reputation grew, whispered about in legal circles. They called me the Silver Guardian. Lawyers who specialized in destroying families would hear I was involved, and sometimes their clients would settle immediately, knowing they could not win against truth when someone like me was watching. But I never sought recognition. I lived my quiet life, tended my garden, read my books, baked my cookies. The warrior only emerged when she was needed. The rest of the time I was just Margaret, grandmother and gardener. One Sunday afternoon, as we sat on my porch eating cookies still warm from the oven, Daniel asked me a question. "Grandma, do you have any regrets? About your life, about the choices you made?" I thought about it while sipping my chamomile tea. The same tea I had been drinking for 50 years, the same ceramic pot, the same ritual of peace. "Only one," I said finally. "I wish I had learned earlier that power is not about how often you use it. It is about using it wisely when it truly matters." I spent 30 years fighting every battle. I exhausted myself. I lost time with your grandfather. When I retired, I went too far the other direction, hiding from responsibility completely. I smiled at my grandsons. But your father case taught me the balance. Now I fight only the battles that matter most. I protect only those who truly need protection. The rest of the time I just live. And that, I think, is wisdom I wish I had learned sooner. Michael, always the sensitive one, leaned his head on my shoulder. "I think you are the coolest grandma in the world." "I am the only grandma you have, sweetheart." "Still the coolest," Daniel added, grinning. Thomas arrived to pick them up, Claire with him. They were planning to take the boys to a concert. As I watched them pile into the car, laughing and teasing each other, I felt that deep satisfaction that comes from knowing you changed the course of someone's life for the better. If I had not walked into that courtroom 7 years ago, Daniel and Michael might have grown up hating their father, poisoned by lies, denied half their heritage. Thomas might have given up, broken by the injustice, lost to depression or worse. The family might have been destroyed beyond repair. But I had acted. I had used my power, my knowledge, my reputation. I had tipped the scales back toward truth. And now this family was whole, healed, happy. That was worth coming out of retirement for. That was worth being the iron justice one more time. As the sun set over my garden, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose, I settled into my rocking chair with my tea. The evening air was cool and sweet, smelling of lavender and rosemary. Birds sang their evening songs. The world was peaceful. Tomorrow I would water my plants. I would read my book. I would live my quiet life. But if the phone rang, if another family needed help, if another child was about to lose a parent to lies and manipulation, I would answer. I would stand up. I would walk into that courtroom and remind everyone watching that justice is not for sale. Because Margaret Catherine Holloway, former Chief Justice, retired warrior, grandmother and gardener, had learned the most important lesson of all. True power is not in never resting. It is in knowing when to rest and when to rise. It is in protecting what matters most and letting go of what does not. It is in being both gentle and fierce, both peaceful and powerful, both at rest and ready. The iron justice had found her peace, not by abandoning who she was, but by embracing all of it. The warrior and the grandmother, the judge and the gardener, the power and the peace. And in that balance, she had finally found home. Years later, when Daniel graduated from law school, he asked me to attend his ceremony. I sat in the audience, just another proud grandmother among hundreds, as he walked across that stage to receive his degree. But during his valedictorian speech, he told a story. When I was 9 years old, my family was being destroyed. My parents were at war. I was scared and confused and starting to believe the lies I was being told. But then my grandmother, who I thought was just a sweet old lady who baked cookies, walked into a courtroom and everything changed. She stood up for truth. She protected us. She saved our family. He looked directly at me. She showed me that justice is not about money or power. It is about courage. It is about standing up when it matters, even when it costs you, even when it scares you, even when you just want peace. Grandma, you taught me that some things are worth fighting for. And that is why I became a lawyer. Be like you. To protect families like you protected ours. The audience applauded. I sat there with tears streaming down my face, Thomas on one side squeezing my hand, Michael on the other side with his arm around my shoulders. My legacy was not just in law books or court rulings. It was sitting on that stage, wearing a cap and gown, ready to carry forward the fight for justice into the next generation. It was in every family I had helped, every child who got to keep their parent, every lie that had been exposed, every truth that had prevailed. It was in knowing that when I was gone, the work would continue. That the iron justice would live on in Daniel, in all the judges I had trained, in all the families I had saved who would now stand up for others. That evening, at the graduation party, surrounded by family and friends, Daniel came over to me. Grandma, I want to specialize in family law. I want to help families like ours. Will you teach me? Will you show me how you did it? I looked at this young man, so earnest and passionate, ready to fight for justice. I saw myself in him 40 years ago, idealistic and determined. Yes, I said. I will teach you everything I know. But remember, it is not about winning every case. It is about protecting those who cannot protect themselves. It is about truth, always truth, even when it is hard. Even when it costs you. Understand, Grandma. I promise I will make you proud. You already have, Daniel. You already have. As I drove home that night, I realized my story was not over. It had simply entered a new chapter. I was 80 years old now, my hands more wrinkled, my steps slower, my hair completely white. But my mind was still sharp. My passion for justice still burned. And now I had a successor, someone to carry the torch when I could no longer hold it. The iron justice would never truly retire. Because justice itself never retires. It is eternal, passed from generation to generation, protected by those who believe in it absolutely. And I, Margaret Catherine Holloway, had ensured that it would endure long after I was gone. That was my true legacy. Not the cases I won or the laws I shaped, but the hearts I changed and the passion I ignited in others to continue the fight. I pulled into my driveway, looked at my garden waiting in the moonlight, and smiled. Some battles end. Others continue forever. And the greatest warriors are not those who fight longest, but those who inspire others to pick up the fight when they can no longer carry it themselves. I had done that. I had passed the torch. And now I could finally rest, truly rest, knowing the work would continue. The iron justice had found her peace at last. Not by stopping the fight but by ensuring it would never stop. And that was the greatest victory of all.